Welcome to the Orion Patience Show.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into something pretty fundamental for many people, the actual day Jesus resurrected.
Right. It's a topic that has the familiar traditional answer, but then layers of, well, potential complexity underneath.
Exactly. Most of us hear Sunday, right? But we're going to explore some different ideas today. We'll look at historical records, scripture, of course, and even some astronomical data.
Yeah, the goal is really to sift through these different sources, pull out the intriguing bits, and see what kind of picture emerges.
And it's fascinating how these different areas, the Bible, other historical writings, science, might actually, point towards something specific.
That's the potential reward, seeing if they converge.
We've got summaries of scholarly talks and a specific look into a Bible study from Stan Mackey at the Reclamation Project. He's clearly passionate about getting to what he sees as the accurate timeline.
He definitely puts forward a detailed case.
So let's jump in. Where does this alternative timeline start? I guess with the year.
Yeah, the year of the Crucifixion, Stan Mackey and the Reclamation Project, they argue strongly for AD 31.
AD 31, okay. And the basis for that?
It starts primarily with Luke's gospel. Luke mentions Jesus' ministry beginning in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar's reign.
Okay, but I know there's some debate about Tiberius's reign and dates, isn't there? AD 33 gets mentioned a lot too, maybe even later.
Absolutely, there is scholarly debate.
Yep.
Mackey's argument, though, hinges on Tiberius starting a co-reign with Augustus back around AD 13.
Ah, okay, so if you count from then.
Exactly. If you count from AD 13, the 15th year starts in AD 27. And if Jesus' ministry was about 3.5 years...
that lands you right in AD 31 for the crucifixion. Makes sense, following that logic.
And there's another layer. Mackey connects this to the prophecy in Daniel, the 69 weeks prophecy, interpreting that as 483 years from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, which some date to 457 BC. Well, that also points to AD 27 for the Messiah's arrival, the start of the ministry.
Wow. Okay, so he sees those two things lining up, Luke's timing and Daniel's prophecy, both pointing to AD 27 and thus AD 31.
Correct. It forms the bedrock for his proposed year.
All right, so if we tentatively accept AD 31 as the year, what about the specific day? That's where it gets really different from tradition.
Right. Mackey argues for Wednesday, specifically Wednesday, March 28th, AD 31.
Wednesday, not Friday.
Yeah.
And March 28th, how does he arrive at that?
The key connection is Passover. We know the crucifixion happened at Passover time.
Yeah, the Gospels are clear on that.
And Passover isn't a fixed calendar date like, December 25th. It's lunar.
Tied to the first full moon of spring, right? And the 14th day of Nisan in the Hebrew calendar.
Precisely. So Mackey refers to astronomical calculations, apparently done by the U.S. Naval Observatory back in, I think, 1919.
Okay, and what did they find for AD 31?
According to his sources, they calculated that the first full moon of spring in AD 31 occurred on Tuesday, March 27th, around 1 p.m. Jerusalem time, using the Julian calendar of that era.
So if the full moon was Tuesday afternoon,
then the 14th of Nisan, Passover, would begin at sunset that evening and encompass the following day, Wednesday, March 28th.
Which lines up perfectly with his proposed crucifixion date.
It does. He also mentions a 6th century writer, Cassiodorus, who also places the crucifixion in AD 31, maybe around March 25th by our calendar, and noted a peculiar solar eclipse. So another pointer to AD 31, even if the exact day is slightly different.
Interesting. So the astronomy seemed to back up a Wednesday Passover in AD 31.
That's the argument being made, yes. And again, Matthew 26, John 18, they anchor the event firmly to Passover.
Okay, so Wednesday crucifixion, now the big one. The time in the grave, how does that fit?
This is a major point for Mackey. He highlights Jesus' own words in Matthew 12.40 about being 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth.
Right, like Jonah.
Exactly. And Mackey, referencing a scholar, suggests that phrase 3 days and 3 nights implies, 3 full 24-hour periods, not just parts of 3 days.
Which is hard to square with a Friday afternoon death and a Sunday morning resurrection. That's really only one full day, Friday night, Saturday night, and then parts of Friday and Sunday.
Correct. It's closer to a day and a half, maybe 2 nights.
So if you start from a Wednesday death, let's see, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday.
Yeah.
That brings you to sunset on Saturday.
3 full days and 3 full nights later would indeed end around sunset on Saturday, the end of the Jewish Sabbath.
Leading to a Saturday resurrection, not Sunday.
That's the conclusion based on that interpretation of 3 days and 3 nights combined with a Wednesday crucifixion.
Okay, but what about all the accounts of the women going to the tomb at dawn on the first day of the week, which is Sunday? Matthew 28, Mark 16, Luke 24.
Ah, yes. This is where Mackey delves into the original Greek. He focuses on a specific word used, particularly in Matthew 28.1, translated as dawn or began to dawn. The word is epiphosko.
Epiphosko. Okay, and what's the argument there?
He argues that while it can mean dawn, its primary meaning is more like to draw on, to draw near, or to approach.
So not necessarily sunrise.
Not necessarily bright morning light, no. He suggests it could mean as the first day of the week was drawing near, which in Jewish reckoning starting at sunset could actually mean Saturday evening as dusk fell and Sunday was about to begin.
So the visit could have been Saturday evening, approaching the first day.
That's the interpretation. He contrasts epiphosko with other Greek words like diasi or orthros, which he says more specifically mean morning twilight or dawn.
So a linguistic argument to place the tomb visit earlier, fitting a Saturday resurrection.
Yes, it's a crucial piece for reconciling the resurrection timing with the gospel accounts of the visit.
Wow, okay. There's another potential snag, though, right? The spices.
Ah, yes, the spices the women prepared. This often trips people up.
Mark says they bought spices after the Sabbath was over. Luke says they prepared spices and then rested on the Sabbath. Seems like a contradiction if it was just Friday crucifixion, Saturday Sabbath.
It does seem contradictory on the surface within the traditional timeline, but Mackey offers a solution based on the idea of two Sabbaths happening close together in that specific Passover week of AD 31.
Two Sabbaths. How does that work?
So you have Passover itself on Wednesday, Nisan 14. The next day, Thursday, Nisan 15, was the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And that first day is considered a high Sabbath, a special festival Sabbath, regardless of what day of the week it falls on.
Okay, so Thursday was a high Sabbath.
Yes. Then Friday would have been a regular day, and then Saturday was the normal weekly Sabbath.
So you have high Sabbath on Thursday, regular day Friday, weekly Sabbath Saturday.
Exactly. So in this scenario, the women would have rested on the high Sabbath Thursday. Then on Friday, after the high Sabbath ended and before the weekly Sabbath began, they could have gone out, bought the spices, as Mark says happened after the Sabbath, meaning the high Sabbath.
And prepared them, as Luke says they did before resting on the Sabbath, meaning the upcoming weekly one.
Precisely. It allows both accounts to fit perfectly within a Wednesday crucifixion timeline. They rest Thursday, shop and prep Friday, rest Saturday.
That very makes a lot of sense of those verses. Are there hints of this high day Sabbath elsewhere?
Mackey points to John 19.31, which explicitly mentions the preparation day before Sabbath and calls that upcoming Sabbath a high day.
A high day. Distinguishing it maybe from the regular weekly one?
That's the argument. And John 19.42 also mentions it being the Jewish day of preparation. Matthew 27.62 talks about the chief priests going to Pilate the next day, the one after the preparation day, implying the day after the crucifixion was a Sabbath, but not necessarily needing it to be the weekly Saturday. Could have been that high day Thursday.
Okay, that two Sabbath explanation seems quite elegant in resolving that spice issue.
It's definitely a key part of the Wednesday crucifixion argument.
So stepping back, looking at the material from the Reclamation Project, Stan Mackey brings all this evidence together, the year, the astronomy, the 3 days and nights, the Greek wording, the two Sabbaths.
Yeah. To build a case for a Wednesday, March 28th, AD 31 crucifixion, and a Saturday evening resurrection just before sunset.
And he then asks a pretty fundamental question, doesn't he? About truth versus tradition.
Yes. What do we do if historical investigation seems to point away from a long-held tradition? Do we change the tradition?
What's his take on that, based on the material?
Yeah, he seems to suggest maybe not necessarily changing the celebration day. He uses Christmas as an analogy. Most scholars don't think December 25th is the actual birth date, but it's the day chosen for celebration.
Right.
So perhaps continue celebrating Resurrection Day on Sunday, but teach what he believes is the accurate history, the Saturday timing.
And his motivation for digging into this, it seems tied to a sense of urgency.
From the transcripts we looked at, yes. There's a sense that understanding the precise truth of biblical events, the details, is increasingly important, particularly in what he refers to as the end times. That accuracy matters for understanding God's plan unfolding.
So wrapping this up for our listeners, what does all this mean? It's a lot to take in.
It really is. I think this deep dive shows just how complex piecing together history, scripture, and even science can be. The Wednesday-Saturday timeline, using this specific evidence, certainly presents a coherent alternative narrative.
It really forces you to look closely at the sources, doesn't it? And maybe question assumptions.
Definitely. It highlights how interpretations like the meaning of Epiphosco or how you count Tiberius's reign can really shift the picture. It encourages critical thinking.
And this is where it gets really challenging, perhaps.
Yeah.
Stan Mackey and others holding this view, they clearly feel the precise timing is significant, that it matters beyond just dates on a calendar, even if it pushes against centuries of tradition.
Yeah, it really prompts that deeper question. How much does historical, factual accuracy about these events impact one's faith or understanding of God?
And what does it mean to pursue truth if it leads you somewhere different from the familiar path? That's a big question.
It absolutely is. And maybe a takeaway question for you, the listener, to ponder is, what implications, if any, does considering this alternative timeline, Wednesday crucifixion, Saturday resurrection, have for your personal understanding of Holy Week? Does it change anything?
It's definitely food for thought, something to research more, maybe discuss.
For sure.
Well, thanks for exploring this with us. We hope this deep dive offered some perhaps surprising facts and things to consider.
Hope it was illuminating.
Until our next deep dive, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep exploring.